Hi guys, I am not going to be apologising for the long time no see blah 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 because I feel like I say it in every video. What I do want to quickly say though is I have a new ring light. Well, it's not new, for me it's the first time I've ever had one, so please bear with me over the next few videos while I'm experimenting with this. I know it's probably going to be a little bit harsh and things for the next few videos, but I will be experimenting. I'm coming at you today with a new style of video for me. It's something that is, for me, it's something I've been wanting to do for a while, but for this year it's going to be something that helps me. Every year for the past few years I have taken part in the Goodreads reading challenge, and every year I have failed miserably. So this year I thought every time I finish a book I'm going to sit down and review it on camera with you guys. That way it's going to give me a little bit more inspiration. I'm actually going to sit down and talk about it. I find it very hard to write a book review on my blog, but I actually find it really easy to talk about books to people. So here we are. The normal live vlogs will continue when I do things. I haven't done one in a while because there hasn't really been much going on, especially over Christmas, but I do have a few bits planned, and I'm sure there will be those odd days where I just pull out the camera and think, sod it, let's go do something. Every time I finish a book, the plan will be to sit down and talk to you guys about it. So I've been doing my research, watching a few booktubers on here, and I've been seeing how they do it, and I think they are amazing and they've given me a lot of inspiration. But I've decided for me, the way that I'm going to personally do it is I'm going to do it in the style of a book club. I found a website. I have my laptop here, my trusty little sidekick. I found some general book club questions, and I'm also going to do some research and try and find some questions specific for each book that I read. So yeah, we're just going to sit and talk through them. I hope this is interesting. I hope it's a different way of doing things, and whether or not you find it interesting, I really hope you stick around. I hope it's not too boring, and the other videos will still continue. Yeah, let's dive into this. I really hope this works. So 9 times out of 10, I'm reading on my Kindle. I have one of the old school style Kindles, so it's one of the black and white ones. It's not touchscreen. I still have the old school buttons down here and up here. So what I'm going to do in each video is I will put a full colour picture here of the book that I've been reading and I'm talking about. So otherwise you're going to be squinting to see this. This is my little beauty. This is 9 times out of 10 in my bag. But if for some reason I can't take this with me, I also do have the Kindle app on my phone. The first book that I read this year was Victoria by Daisy Goodwin. And that is I want to say it's the book that goes along with the ITV series, which it definitely is. But off the top of my head, I can't remember if the book was rated first and then the ITV series came second, which I think it's that. I was a massive fan, still am a massive fan of Victoria and ITV. I am a huge fan of the British monarchy and British royalty. That is where a lot of my British history interest lies. Don't understand why it took me so long to read this book, if I'm being honest. It took me a while to find it actually. I really wanted it in the physical format, and then Ryan was just like, just buy it for your Kindle for God's sake. So I did. It is very romanticised. It's very much like the ITV series. I do know a lot of it is based off Victoria's actual diaries, which you can read online. But I still do wonder how much of it has actually been romanticised. But I try not to think about that. However, there were aspects of it, unless I'm remembering the TV series differently, there were some aspects of the book that I remember happening differently on screen. So I feel there's either bits that translate differently from book to screen, as there is with everything, or things just work better on screen, or there's just bits that work better in the page. But either way, the book works really well. I just really enjoyed it. I just really enjoyed the TV series, so I was naturally going to enjoy the book. So I would recommend giving the book a go if you enjoyed the TV series. So we will start with the specific questions because I think some of these are really interesting. If you see me looking down, obviously I'm staring at my laptop, I do apologise, but I will try and put the questions somewhere on the screen so you guys can see what I'm talking about, and I will also put any questions that I did answer down below in the description box. If you've seen the ITV mini-series, how do you think it compares to the novel? I find this really interesting because This makes me realise that people don't realise the TV series was literally based off the book. Where do you feel Victoria gets the strength to try and stand up against her family and those who try to dictate her role as queen? This one I found really interesting, and this one is really obvious. This one isn't just obvious from the RTV series, the book. This is obvious from quite a few documentaries I've watched about Queen Victoria. Like, the younger she was, the more that she would stand up and say no, and then this followed her throughout her life. I personally think because Victoria became queen so young, literally on her 18th birthday, but before this, obviously, she worked out, like, when she was 12, that, oh crap, if he doesn't have a kid, I'm gonna be queen. And obviously everybody protected her and wrapped her in bubble wrap. Like, her mum wouldn't even let her walk down the stairs on her own when she was younger, just in case she tripped and fell. I think she'd had a life of everybody telling her, don't do this because you're going to be queen. You can't do this because you're going to be queen. When she actually became queen, she went, okay, well, I'm now queen, so you can't do that anymore. I'm not being funny. Who as a teenager didn't get to that point with their parents and have that, you can't tell me what to do anymore stage? We've all been there. Leading on from that question, in what ways do you think Victoria comes across as a typical teenager and or as a powerful sovereign? There are so many ways in the early reign where she comes across as a typical teenager. She literally banishes her mum to the other side of the palace. She refuses to give up her ladies in waiting when Lord originally resigns. But I think as she started to realise that she couldn't be a typical teenager, I mean, all throughout the book, she still has those typical teenage moments. Spoiler, sorry. And she asks Lord to marry her, and he rejects her. She literally locks herself in her bedroom for like a whole day. Typical teenager. But before that, we'd had so many powerful moments from her. Like, she makes a typical teenage mistake and then she comes back and learns from it, and you can see her realising that she's a young woman. She has the power here to actually make the change, that people actually might start listening to her here. And I find that really, really powerful. But I find that for the majority of the book, in the early days of her reign, the book goes from her becoming queen right up until her and Albert meet. That is the period. For the majority of the book, it is her being a typical teenager. She's suddenly given all this power and she's just going crazy with it. Literally, it's quite interesting to see. How do you see the role of women in general, and Queen Victoria in particular, in the course of the novel? Well, it was the Victorian era, so the role of the woman was still very different. You could see they were very conflicted. You could see that women still weren't respected. You could see that even when they retire after dinner, the women go off to one parlour to play card games and piano, and the men go off to their parlour to smoke cigarettes and do whatever it is they do and drink whiskey. But they almost have to respect Victoria. But because she's queen, men have to respect her because she's their sovereign. But they don't want to respect her because she's a woman. It's a real power struggle, and it's a really interesting one to watch unfold. So it's interesting, and I wish there was another bit to see how that carried on throughout the eras, because I still don't think that she actually got the respect she deserved for a long time. How did Victoria's sheltered upbringing at Kensington Palace influence her ultimate ability to rule her country? Now, this is one of the really interesting aspects of the book, and this is where you can see that everyone tried to protect her, and to the point that she wasn't allowed to walk down the stairs on her own. She had to sleep next to her mum for her entire upbringing, in case somebody tried to break in and kill her, which is crazy. And then you can see it in the sense of they're trying to talk to her about things, and Victoria has no idea what's actually going on in the country because her mum has sheltered her away from everything. So Lord is telling her about so many things, and I think that's why she falls so heavily, so quickly for Lord He's almost like the first person who actually talks openly and honestly to her. And I sometimes wonder, had Victoria not been so sheltered, would she have fell for Lord Or was it the case of Lord was the only person who was open and honest with her and told her exactly what was going on in this country of hers? That's my opinion. Okay, let's go on to some of these general questions because these are just as interesting. What feelings did this book evoke for you? So apart from pure romanticism, this book actually made me quite angry in parts. There were parts of this book where Victoria was not taken seriously because she was a woman. She was not taken seriously because she was a young woman. I face this quite a lot at work. I am a registered nurse, but I'm 25. But I also work in elderly. So I can walk into situations, I can walk into meetings, and they'll go, oh, can you go get me the nurse? And I'm like, I am your nurse. I'll work with other nurses who are older than me, and they just do not want to hear my opinion. So I relate to Victoria a lot. Like when she was trying to say things and her opinions and just nobody wanted to hear her out, and she's having to go to other people and say, how can I get people to listen to me on this? I totally understand that. Which character in this book would you most like to meet? Now, this is a shocker for everybody because everyone thinks I'm going to say Victoria and Albert because I love them so much. I'm actually going to say Ernst, Albert's brother, because he sounds like such a character. And I really want to know what Albert was like behind closed doors. We see this romanticised version of Albert all the time. And we see the shy and nervous Albert before he met Victoria, or when he was trying to win Victoria over. What was he like in those moments? When he was coming back and him and Victoria had got into those little arguments because they were so similar, what was that like? And what was he like growing up? Where did Albert get this maternalness from? Because that's what it was. If you look at Albert and Victoria's relationship, Albert was the maternal one, Victoria was not. Albert did not have a mother. Where did he get this from? And I feel that Ernst would be the perfect person to ask those questions to. If you could hear the same story from another person's point of view, whose would you choose? I would actually really like to see this story told from Victoria's mother's perspective. Like, I want to see Victoria's reign told from her mother's perspective. I think that would be really, really interesting, especially those early days. I want to see what Victoria's mother was thinking when she was sheltering her when she was at Kensington Palace. And then what it was like when Victoria banished her when they got to Buckingham Palace. What was going through Victoria's mother's head? How did she justify the absolute sheltering? How did she then feel when she was banished and Victoria wasn't listening to her? Did she think she was just being a selfish teenager, or did she understand that she was suddenly free and had grown these wings? That was my 10 cents on Victoria by Daisy Goodwin. I hope you found this a little bit interesting, and I hope it's just a little bit different to the kind of booktube that's out there. Like I've said, I am not the typical book reviewer. I've never been any good at it, and I never will be. I can't write them, and I'm not any good at describing a plot of a book, and I'm not any good at describing how the book made me feel or anything like that. So for me, going through these book club style questions are going to be a lot easier. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've read this book, please leave me comments down below as to what you thought to it, and I hope I will see you soon. Bye guys. I always feel so out of practice when I just sit down and film a video. Anyway, try blah blah blah. How do you see the role of woman in general? How do you see my 10 cents on